So you already know what it's about, but I figured I'd show you the tool first. I've had some experience now using this on our tractor tires. We have a little green John Deere with some R4 tires that are pretty useless for anything except an industrial site. So that was the first excuse to buy this. I got it on Amazon for about $100. I also played around with grooving the over the tire tracks that we put on our skidder if we need it for something extra muddy or snowy. They didn't really need it, but I wanted an excuse to test it out a little more. And one thing I realized, if I could do it over, I ordered this with just the one tip. Actually, I didn't even know they had these other tips. So I would recommend, if you're going to use this a lot or for a lot of projects, get a variety pack or one that includes a variety pack. This is perfectly adequate for most things. It's a number 4 blade, and that's what I did everything with so far that I've actually used. I believe it's 5/32 wide, the groove. Of course, you can change the depth. But for the Bronco, I didn't want to take this much rubber out. There's a few reasons why. Later on, I can get into the engineering philosophy behind the tire tread design that I'm going for. But ultimately, I knew I wanted something skinnier. I wanted something thicker than just a sipe, but narrower than this groove. So I got a variety pack, which of course included a number 3 blade, which is a little bit skinnier. I think this is 3/32, which might be adequate, but still you could take out a decent chunk. Of course, there's another number 4, 6, or maybe that was a 5, a 6, and an 8. I did play around with this. Maybe I'll show a picture here. This thing is ridiculous. This would be for like doing a tractor tire or something. I did fool around with the an old skidder tire on both this and the number 4, just trying to figure things out. But my favorite of all of these is actually this guy, because you can mount multiple, and if you're creative, you could probably mount them at different widths. This came with 3, I think, number 2 blades mounted actually upside down for siping. So 3 of those upside down would cut 6 sipes. Remember, the sipe is just the cut, not a groove removing material. I'll do some siping later, but right now I just want the groove, and I think I'm going to go with the number 2 because it's the skinniest I have while still clearly removing material to make a groove. And I'll set the depth to about 6 mils, or just shy of a 1/4 inch. I think that's a good value. Any shallower, and I might be doing this again before I want to. Any deeper, and I might be hurting the integrity of the tread a little bit too much. I think that this depth here, maybe a little bit less than this, is a good amount to serve the purpose I'm looking for. So I think the first question is why? Why would I do this? These tires look perfectly fine. They've got a lot of life left. They're only a little over a year old. Well, the Trepadors are my favorite tire I've ever bought so far. I love KO2s. I love Falcon Wild Peaks. I had KO2s on this. I have them on my old truck. We have Falcon Wild Peaks on our farm truck, which is a 2011 Super Duty. But this is on another level. If you want to get into the rocks or the mud, this thing is fantastic. And it looks cool. I mean, there's credit there too, right? It's basically a glorified tractor tire. But as you can see, the siping from the factory, and it's generous to even call that siping. This is not like a KO2 tire in terms of the amount of tread block division. These are just big fat blocks meant to plow through mud and rocks. And the original lines are almost disappearing on 3 of the 5 tires. Why 3? Well, I've done a 5-tire rotation. The first 4 tires had 8,000 miles. I did a rotation, and I'm about 8,000 again. So that means 3 of them have 16. 1 of them has 8. That's the spare. And the other one has maybe 8,200. And that's this guy, because it went from the spare to here. So you can see I've still got the siping left on these, as does the spare. These ones are only 8,000 miles. But the other 3, it's starting to disappear. And so I think I'm going to use this as an opportunity to improve the design. And I use improve lightly. I think you got to be careful when you get into something like this. The tire engineers aren't stupid. They know what they're designing the tire for. A mud tire is never going to be a winter tire. And the easiest way to figure that out is a winter tire is never going to be a mud tire. they have different tread compounds, they have different tread designs fundamentally, and probably the most obvious choice aside or design difference aside from the compound material or the chemistry is just the size of the blocks. A KO2 or a Wild Peak has much smaller gaps between the blocks, and every single block itself is either smaller, or if you have a big block like a corner block on the KO2, it's subdivided with a lot of siping, and that siping is deep. And that makes it really versatile on a lot of different conditions, including the snow. These tires, I don't doubt, in fact, I've experienced, are pretty good in the snow off-road. But really, that's any tire that's big and has treads and is aired down will be fine in the snow when you're off-road. But if you want snow performance where it matters most, which would be on the road, you need either a different compound or a lot more siping. And I use siping and grooving interchangeably. They are different. As you can see, these really are technically grooves. And I'm going to make these grooves larger. And I'm also going to sipe. So I'm probably going to keep the siping a little bit limited. If I took that siping blade and put, a set of 6 gashes through every single block, or maybe, 12, run it twice, I could make this a lot better in the snow. But of course, I'm going to severely eat into my tread longevity. It's going to chip out or chunk out on the rocks, or it's just going to break down easier on the road. So I really want to be careful not to impact the performance in, rocks or mud, as well as the lifespan that I should expect from this tire. I'm really going to try to stick to the OEM design with slightly deeper, slightly wider grooves. And in the case of the center block, I think I will go all the way through the end. I'm hesitant to do that. I don't want to do that on the corners because that's just going to take too much integrity. I know it's going to chunk out because I've already seen, sorry, I'm looking at a new tire here. This is relatively new, and you can still see bits where it chunks out. Maybe I'll switch over to the other side just so you can see a little easier. The 4 that are on the ground now were on my overlanding trip in Colorado, so they probably got treated more harshly than the last set. But I want to keep the corner treads as strong as possible, so I will be regrooving, but not cutting them all the way through. The center blocks I think I can be a little more forgiving with. If you look again at a KO2 or a Falcon Wild Peak, I think that's kind of a gold standard where you have a good combination of deep grooves and deep sipes. So I'll run a groove through the OEM pattern all the way through, and then I think I'll divide the block with a siping line that goes the other direction. So that way this center block, instead of being one massive block, will be 2 separate blocks that are again divided with a siping line. So it'll really be more like 4 pads. And that helps, you get more edges for contact, but you also get a little better compliance around the surface you're grabbing. Now, does that make it more vulnerable on the rocks? Sure. But I don't think I'm going to make it too deep in the center. And I'm here in Michigan, so I'm dealing with snow often enough on the roads that I want the performance to be a little bit better. And actually last winter, I had an experience on the expressway in not that deep of snow. Well, obviously you're not going to have that deep of snow on the expressway, but it was like a fresh snowstorm, and I spun out pretty bad with the back. And I'm sure that's, to those of you who've experienced it, it's not only frightening, it's also a little embarrassing. Here you got this amazing off-road capable machine, and then you're looking over your shoulder like, oh, I hope a Subaru didn't see me right there. That's a little embarrassing. Obviously, these tires will take me places a Subaru will never go. But the goal here is to make them perform maybe a little bit more like a KO2 on the highway. So I'll get right to it. I got to plug in that gun. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to heat up, and I'll get to work. Right off the bat, I'm realizing that leaving all these spacers on with one tip makes it so I cannot see the guideline. Not the worst deal, especially on the ones where it's almost gone, but on these, like the spare where I've got plenty of existing groove left, I kind of want to stay right on it. So I'm going to take a little break, pop these spacers off so that it will be a little easier to see exactly where the blade is. Since I changed out the tip to just be about the width of the blade, I've had much better luck seeing where I'm going. It's not perfect, but I think it'll do. Another thing I noticed, as I dive the blade in, there's a little bit of variation. It doesn't just go straight down. I have to kind of cut my way in, and then I can go out. Now I can pull out a lot steeper. So for example, if you wanted it to be a deeper cut on the outside, you'd want to come from the inside out and then kind of pull right out. I'm not too worried about it. I'm just going to do this the way that's easy for my, just easy for me to push on it. Be a lot easier with a tire stand. I might end up making one because I've only got, half a dozen of these done. I finished this tire last night. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It looks basically OEM. I think at a glance you wouldn't even notice. Under scrutiny, you can clearly see that the grooves are thicker and deeper than they are from the factory, but it overall, I think, follows the OEM pattern pretty well. There's a couple places where maybe I got a little off. Another thing I want to note is you got to keep the blade moving. A couple times I let it sit a little bit as I was trying to get the angle right, and you can see it scorched the tire a little more than it should have. I don't think that is, deep penetrating damage. Probably disappear after some driving. But just something to note, you want to keep the blade moving. For some reason, the middle ones I seem to do a better job at. Now, as far as the siping, that's just going to be a blade cut, no groove. I played around with a few ideas. Simplest would just be cutting a line right through, but it ends up being so vertical that I don't think it's going to help me as much. If you look at a KO2, for example, the siping, it biases towards a little more horizontal. And so I think I'm leaning towards an option like this, where it's still a straight line, and I have a perpendicular reference to this. So I just kind of grab this corner, go straight through, grab this corner, go straight through. Should be easy to do consistently. The line will be about a 45-degree angle. And again, it's not going to be a deep groove. It's just going to be a cut. And I can show you what the tip looks like here. If I can get it to focus. It's just that. So all it's doing is allowing the tread block to flex a little bit and maybe trap a little bit of snow. I mean, you guys know what siping is for. I'm only going to do a little bit. I'm not going to sipe, the whole thing, because I don't want to compromise the integrity too much. But I think this will be the ticket for keeping most of my mud terrain integrity while giving me a little better performance with snow on the road. You may notice from how dirty the floor is, I'm at the shop back at the farm. Keep switching locations for this. Everything's going well. I just wanted to take this opportunity to show something I hadn't really thought about, not surprised by, but the tires that are more heavily used have some serious chunking. So I think the best thing to do is probably just follow the same line through. And of course, it's going to, miss some material. But I just wanted to show the before, and I'll go ahead and give this a push. Not sure how well I can do this with the camera. Bear with me. It does take some effort to push. It's not much, but it's some. Okay, and you can see this time it stuck. It normally doesn't stick. And it did actually cut all the way through, though obviously you can see the depth there. And the tread is just missing, a little bit of the groove. I think that'll be fine, though. I'll go ahead and try it right behind. All right, that's what it normally does. The tread stays, and I can pick it out. And just to show you guys how I'm doing these front ones. Once the blades get to about that intersection point, I turn it rather sharply. And I reduce the force once I get to the end because I don't want this to plow into the other block. And again, you can see it sticks in there. They're pretty easy to pull out. I usually let them sit for a bit because they're hot if you try to grab them right away. Here's that same block after removing the tabs. Overall, I think that'll work. It's a good way to breathe some new life into these blocks that are a little more chunked out. I forgot to mention is you want to keep the tire clean. Now with the spare, it was already clean for the most part, but this one not only has it been driven on, I'm in a dirty shop. I've got some, you know, oil dry on the floor. So it's honestly, it's pretty filthy. So you probably won't have to worry about all this, but I got a wire brush handy. So I just wire brush out the groove, try to get all the dirt out. It just saves the blades. Otherwise you're going to go through them faster. And especially if you see a pebble stuck in there, you got to get those out. But you know, a little bit of dirt probably doesn't hurt, but I try to keep it clean, you know, something like that. And that's probably good enough to go. So this is about 100 miles of driving. Just kind of wanted to show if anything looked like it was going to be an immediate problem. The siping definitely shows up quite a bit more. I don't know if it's just the edge rounding out or maybe it's the blocks just pulling apart a little bit. Not in a bad way, but I'm happy with that. The grooves themselves look good. I'm noticing I'm definitely trapping some pebbles more than before, but that's to be expected because the grooves were almost non-existent, so you're not going to trap anything. I think that's a good sign, actually. It's not anything too excessive. This one's got about 100 miles on it. Let me check the rear real quick. This one's probably closer to 200, maybe more. Mileage since cutting the grooves, I mean. Overall, I don't see anything bad. In the cases here where you see some deterioration, that's actually not from this groove. That was the original groove that had kind of chunked out and I just cut right through it. A little bit of that there. I'll let you guys know how it performs in the snow. I'm going to wait to publish this video until I can actually drive it in the snow. We've got a little bit here, but that's nothing. I want to get, you know, something like that on the pavement. We'll give it a test, see how it feels, and I'll let you guys know my thoughts. All right, we got our first major winter storm for Michigan. We were in southeast Michigan. I didn't actually I was expecting rain because I'm always prepared to be disappointed, but this will be the first test we have. Well, actually last night I went driving, but last night it was actually just above freezing when we were getting dumped on, so everything was slushy and traction was pretty bad, I think, no matter what. But right now everything's actually pretty cold. We're in the 20s. I know that's not really cold, but it's cold enough to be dry with the snow, which is really what I was hoping to test most with grooving and siping to improve winter performance. So I'm just gonna have my wife back up and just kind of see how these slots or grooves pack in properly when it's not super wet and slushy. And I didn't really have any traction issues yesterday, but I could tell there was some slipping. Obviously, there's a little slip there. There's ice below this snow too, which again is kind of what I want to see if we get any improvement on. But I really like the look of that. That's exactly what I'm going for. You can see there is where it was just a little icy. I just kind of follow her forward and inspect the tires and tracks. This is really what I was looking to test on more than yesterday. Kind of a dry snow on ice on pavement, which I think is a more practical solution or a more practical thing to test than just deep, wet, slushy snow. In that case, you just need big treads or big tires. It is a little wet underneath, I guess. It's icy, but also wet. You know, I'll have to test more in the... Yeah, I can see some of these grooves are pretty wet still, so it's still not ideal conditions to test these changes. I like what I'm seeing, so we're gonna drive to the store, run some errands, and we'll kind of get a subjective evaluation of the performance. All right, before we head out, I'm actually gonna have my wife kind of stomp on the gas, and this is just two-wheel drive, and then stomp on the brakes. And it's super slick underneath all this, but I think it's doing pretty good for just two-wheel drive. We're definitely getting some spinning, but... All right, we're gonna try one more. And it's icy, but I don't think that's terrible. I think it's pretty good. It is still a little slushy. I know the snow's not super deep here, but I wanted to show you guys. I came along this berm here. This is a kind of a retaining berm for the pond, and went straight up that incline. And I don't know, maybe that's 30 degrees. Now again, this is aired down to about 6 or 7 PSI. And I did get into the dirt here, but there's no tire spin. This was just straight crawling right up. So I'm impressed. I did not expect to get up there. I thought I'd get halfway up and get some tire spin. I just crawled right over it. No problem.